The scream that tore through the dusty afternoon air of Springerville, Arizona, made every person on Main Street freeze in their tracks, and Lucas Everhart knew before he even turned around that someone was in real trouble. It was August 1878, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the high desert town, casting sharp shadows across the wooden storefronts and hitching posts where horses stood, with their heads lowered against the heat. Lucas had just finished loading supplies onto his wagon when he heard that scream, followed by harsh laughter that made his jaw tighten with anger he did not yet understand. He dropped the sack of flour he had been holding and moved toward the commotion, his boots kicking up small clouds of red dust with each long stride. A crowd had gathered near the mercantile, and as Lucas pushed through the ring of onlookers, his breath caught in his throat at the sight before him. A young woman knelt in the dirt, her hands covering her face, her shoulders shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken inside her. Around her lay scattered locks of long, dark hair, and standing over her with a pair of shears in his meaty fist was Clayton Moore, a ranch foreman known for his mean streak and his even meaner boss. The woman's hair had been cut in jagged, uneven chunks, some pieces hanging to her shoulders, while others stuck out at odd angles barely past her ears. It was a cruel, deliberate butchering, not a haircut. Clayton stood there grinning, his face flushed with whiskey and satisfaction, while two of his ranch hands flanked him with their arms crossed over their chests like guards protecting royalty instead of witnessing an assault. "That will teach you to think you are too good for honest work," Clayton spat at the woman. "Walking around this town with your head high, acting like you are better than everyone else just because you can read books and write pretty words. Well, look at you now. Not so proud anymore, are you?" Lucas felt something hot and fierce rise in his chest, something that had nothing to do with the desert heat. He had seen injustice before, had witnessed cruelty in various forms during his 30 years on this earth. But there was something about this particular scene that struck him as especially vile. The deliberate humiliation, the public nature of it, the way this man had tried to strip away this woman's dignity along with her hair. "That is enough," Lucas said, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd like a blade. He stepped into the circle, placing himself between Clayton and the woman. "Whatever grievance you think you have, this is not how men settle things." Clayton's grin widened, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "This does not concern you, Everhart. The girl needed to be taught a lesson. She refused work at the ranch, said she would not serve men like us, too high and mighty for her own good. Figured cutting off that precious hair she is always brushing and pinning up would bring her down a notch or two." "You figured wrong," Lucas said quietly, but there was steel in his tone that made several people in the crowd take a step back. He was not a large man by frontier standards, standing just under 6 feet tall with a lean, rangy build, but there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested crossing him would be a mistake. "You assaulted this woman, cut her without her permission. That is a crime, Moore." Clayton laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Crime? In this town? Sheriff Briggs answers to Mr. Hartwell, and I work for Mr. Hartwell. Nothing is going to happen to me, and you know it. Now step aside before you make an enemy you cannot afford to have." Lucas did not step aside. Instead, he turned slightly, extending his hand down toward the woman who still knelt in the dirt, surrounded by her severed hair. "Miss, let me help you up." For a long moment she did not move. Then slowly, so slowly it seemed to take all the courage she possessed, she lowered her hands from her face and looked up at him. Lucas felt something shift inside his chest when their eyes met. Hers were a deep brown, almost black, and they were filled with such a mixture of humiliation, rage, and pain that he wanted to turn around and put his fist through Clayton's smug face. But more than that, he wanted to help her stand, to give her back some measure of the dignity this bastard had tried to steal. She placed her small hand in his larger one, and he helped her to her feet. She swayed slightly, and he steadied her with his other hand on her elbow. Up close, he could see that despite the butchered hair, despite the tears streaking through the dust on her face, she was beautiful. Not in the conventional way that men usually noticed, but in a way that suggested strength and intelligence and fire beneath the surface. The ruined hair did nothing to diminish that. If anything, it made her seem fiercer somehow, like a warrior marked by battle. "Your beauty is not in your hair," Lucas said softly so that only she could hear. "Do not let this man make you think otherwise." She stared at him with those dark eyes, searching his face, as if trying to determine whether he meant what he said or was offering empty comfort. Whatever she saw, there must have satisfied her because she straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and turned to face Clayton Moore with a look that could have melted iron. "You are a coward," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "Only a coward attacks someone weaker, someone who cannot fight back. You think you have humiliated me, but all you have done is show everyone here exactly what kind of man you are. I hope you are proud." Clayton's face darkened with anger. He took a step forward, raising his hand as if to strike her, but Lucas moved faster. His hand shot out and gripped Clayton's wrist, stopping the blow before it could land. The crowd gasped collectively. "You have done enough damage for one day," Lucas said. "Time for you to leave, now." For a tense moment, the two men stood locked in position, Lucas gripping Clayton's wrist, Clayton's face turning progressively redder with rage and the effort of trying to pull free. Finally, Clayton yanked his arm away and stepped back, breathing hard. "This is not over," he snarled. "Not by a long shot. Mr. Hartwell will hear about this, and you will regret sticking your nose where it does not belong." "I will take that chance," Lucas replied evenly. "Now get out of here before I decide to involve the sheriff after all, regardless of who he answers to." Clayton made a show of spitting in the dirt near Lucas's boots, then stalked off with his two men following behind like obedient dogs. The crowd began to disperse, people turning away and going back to their business with the guilty speed of those who had witnessed something shameful and wanted to forget they had done nothing to stop it. Lucas turned back to the woman. "Are you hurt? Besides the hair, I mean. Did he harm you in any other way?" She shook her head slowly, then seemed to realize she was trembling. "No. He grabbed me as I was leaving the mercantile, pushed me down, and before I understood what was happening, he started cutting. I tried to fight him, but he is so much stronger, and his men held my arms." Anger surged through Lucas again, but he kept his voice calm. "Do you have somewhere to go? Someone who can look after you?" "I have a room at the boarding house," she said. "Mrs. Patterson rents to me. I teach reading and writing to children whose parents can pay, and I do bookkeeping for some of the shops in town. That is why Clayton hates me. His boss, Mr. Hartwell, wanted to hire me to work at his ranch, doing accounts and such. But I refused. I had heard stories about how he treats the women who work for him, and I wanted no part of it. Apparently, that was taken as an insult." "An insult," Lucas repeated, shaking his head. "A woman has the right to refuse work she does not want. That is not an insult. That is common sense and self-preservation." A ghost of a smile flickered across her face, though it did not reach her eyes. "Not everyone sees it that way, especially not men like Mr. Hartwell who are used to getting what they want." Lucas bent down and gathered up her scattered packages, items that had fallen when Clayton attacked her. A book, some thread and needles, a small bag of sugar, the simple everyday purchases of someone trying to build a life. "Let me walk you back to the boarding house, and if you would allow it, I would like to make sure Clayton and his friends do not bother you again." She looked at him with that searching gaze again. "Why are you helping me? You do not even know my name." "Lucas Everhart," he said, extending his hand in a proper introduction this time. "I have a small ranch about 5 miles outside of town. Nothing fancy, just me and my horses and a few head of cattle. I come into Springerville once a week for supplies and to check on things. And I am helping you because it is the right thing to do. A man who would stand by and watch what happened to you is not much of a man at all." She took his hand and shook it formally, and he noticed that despite everything that had just happened, her grip was firm. "Lily Zimmerman, and thank you, Mr. Everhart. I appreciate your kindness more than I can say." They walked together down Main Street toward the boarding house, a 2-story building painted white with blue shutters that stood at the far end of town near the small church. People watched them as they passed, some with curiosity, others with what looked like approval, and a few with expressions that suggested they thought Lucas was a fool for making an enemy of William Hartwell's foreman. Lucas did not care what any of them thought. He had learned long ago that living according to your own conscience was more important than winning popularity contests. Mrs. Patterson met them at the door of the boarding house, her round face creased with concern. She was a widow in her 50s who ran the place with a firm hand and a kind heart, and the moment she saw Lily's butchered hair, she let out a sound of dismay. "Oh, my dear girl, what has happened to you?" Lily explained, her voice growing steadier as she recounted the story. Lucas watched Mrs. Patterson's expression shift from concern to outrage, her lips pressing into a thin line. "That Clayton Moore is a menace," Mrs. Patterson declared, "and William Hartwell is worse for employing him. I am sorry this happened to you, Lily. Come inside. Let me see what I can do to even out your hair at least. It will be short, but it will be better than these ragged pieces." Lily nodded, then turned to Lucas. "Thank you again, Mr. Everhart. I do not know what would have happened if you had not intervened." "Call me Lucas, please," he said, "and you are welcome. If you need anything, or if anyone bothers you, send word to my ranch. It is the Everhart place. Anyone can give you directions. I mean that, Miss Zimmerman. Do not hesitate." Something warmed in her eyes, softening the hard edges that pain and humiliation had carved there. "Call me Lily then, and I will remember." He tipped his hat to both women and headed back to his wagon, his mind churning with thoughts of Lily Zimmerman and her ruined hair and the fire in her eyes when she had called Clayton Moore a coward. There was something about her that had gotten under his skin in the space of minutes, something that made him want to know more about her, to hear her story, to understand what had brought a woman like her to a rough town like Springerville. As he drove his wagon out of town, Lucas could not shake the image of those dark eyes looking up at him, full of so much emotion it had nearly knocked him back a step. He had meant what he said. Her beauty was not in her hair. It was in the steel of her spine, the intelligence in her gaze, the courage it had taken to stand up and face her attacker, even after being so thoroughly violated. Hair would grow back. That kind of spirit was rare and precious. The ride back to his ranch gave Lucas plenty of time to think. He had been alone for 5 years now, ever since his wife Sarah had died of fever, taking their unborn child with her. The grief had nearly destroyed him, and for a long time, he had believed he would never feel anything for another woman again. He had built walls around his heart, focused on his work, on building his ranch into something sustainable, on simply getting through each day. But something about Lily Zimmerman had slipped past those walls like water through cracks in stone. Maybe it was the injustice of what had been done to her. Maybe it was the way she had faced her attacker with such fierce dignity. Or maybe it was simply that, after 5 years of numbness, his heart was finally ready to feel again. Whatever the reason, Lucas knew he would be returning to Springerville sooner than his usual weekly visit. He needed to make sure Lily was safe, that Clayton Moore had not tried anything else. That was what he told himself anyway. The truth that he was not quite ready to acknowledge was that he simply wanted to see her again. The next morning, Lucas rode into town on his best horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Copper. He told himself he was just checking in, making sure there had been no further trouble, but he had also taken extra care with his appearance, putting on a clean shirt and even trimming his beard. When he arrived at the boarding house, Mrs. Patterson answered his knock with a knowing smile that made him feel like a young man courting for the first time. "She is in the back garden," Mrs. Patterson said without preamble, "reading to some of the children. Go on around." Lucas found Lily sitting on a bench beneath a cottonwood tree, a book open in her lap, 3 children arranged on the ground around her, listening with rapt attention. Her hair had been evened out as Mrs. Patterson had promised, cut short so that it barely brushed her shoulders, curved slightly around her face. In the dappled sunlight, filtering through the leaves, she looked like something out of a painting. The children did not seem to notice or care about her hair. They were absorbed in whatever story she was telling them. Lucas waited quietly until she finished the chapter and closed the book. The children groaned in protest, begging for more, but Lily laughed and shooed them away with promises of continuing tomorrow. As they scattered, she looked up and saw Lucas standing there. Surprise crossed her face, followed by something that might have been pleasure. "Mr. Everhart, I did not expect to see you again so soon." "Lucas," he corrected gently, "I wanted to make sure you were all right, that there had been no more trouble." She stood, smoothing her skirt, a simple blue cotton dress that had seen better days but was clean and well mended. "No trouble. Mrs. Patterson says that Mr. Hartwell rode through town last night in a fury, but he did not stop here. I think perhaps having witnesses to what Clayton did has made him cautious about taking further action. Or maybe he simply does not care enough to pursue the matter. Or maybe he knows there are people who will not stand by and let him or his men harm you again," Lucas said. Lily tilted her head, studying him. "Is that what you are, my protector now?" There was no mockery in her tone, only curiosity, and Lucas considered his answer carefully. "I would like to be your friend if you will allow it, and friends look out for each other. Friends, Lily repeated softly. She walked a few steps closer, and Lucas caught the scent of lavender soap and something else, something that was uniquely her. I do not have many friends in this town, Mr. Everhart. Most people are kind enough, but they keep their distance. I think I make them uncomfortable. A woman alone, unmarried, making her own way. It does not fit their understanding of how things should be. Lucas, he said again, and I do not care much about how things should be according to other people. I have found that living your own life according to your own principles is hard enough without trying to meet everyone else's expectations. A real smile broke across her face this time, transforming her features. I think we are going to be good friends then, Lucas. They walked together through the garden, talking easily as if they had known each other for years instead of less than a day. Lily told him about growing up in St. Louis, the daughter of a newspaperman who had believed passionately in education for women as well as men. She had learned to read before she was 4, had devoured every book she could get her hands on, had dreamed of going to university, though that door was closed to women in most places. When her father had died 3 years ago, she had found herself alone with no money and no prospects. Her mother had died when Lily was young, and there were no other relatives willing to take her in, so she had come west, looking for a place where a woman with an education might be able to make a living. I chose Springerville almost at random, she admitted. I saw an advertisement for a school teacher, but by the time I arrived, the position had been filled. So I started offering private lessons, doing bookkeeping, whatever work I could find that used my skills. It has been enough to survive on, but barely. When Mr. Hartwell offered me a position at his ranch, the money he quoted was more than I make in 3 months. For a moment, I was tempted, but then I heard the stories from women who had worked there, about how he expects more than just bookkeeping from his female employees, about how his men treat women like property. I could not do it, no matter how much I needed the money. I would rather starve than sell my self-respect. Lucas listened, his admiration for this woman growing with every word. That took courage, and it was the right choice, even if it made you a target. Was it? Lily stopped walking and turned to face him fully. Look what my pride cost me? Lucas. Clayton cut off my hair to humiliate me, to punish me for refusing his employer. Maybe I should have just taken the job, endured whatever came with it, and kept my head down. At least then I would still have my hair. Lucas reached out slowly, telegraphing his intention so she could step back if she wanted to, and gently touched the short strands that now framed her face. Your hair will grow back, Lily. But if you had compromised who you are, if you had allowed yourself to be used and degraded just to earn money, that damage would have been permanent. You made the right choice. And for what it is worth, you are beautiful. The hair does not matter. She drew in a sharp breath, her eyes searching his face. You said something like that yesterday, that my beauty was not in my hair. Why did you say that? Because it is true, Lucas said simply. Your beauty is in your strength, in your intelligence, in the fire that makes you stand up for yourself, even when you are terrified. Clayton Moore thought cutting your hair would break your pride, would make you less than what you were. But all he did was reveal how small and petty he is. You are still exactly who you were before, Lily. Actually, you are more, because now everyone knows that you will not be broken by cruelty or intimidation. Tears welled in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Instead, she smiled, a tremulous but genuine expression of joy. Thank you for that, for seeing me as more than just a woman who lost her hair. They stood there in the garden, the Arizona sun warm on their shoulders, something unspoken passing between them. Lucas felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling a little more, and the strange thing was that he did not mind. For the first time in 5 years, the prospect of caring for someone, of opening himself to the possibility of loss again, did not seem like pure foolishness. It seemed like maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. Over the next several weeks, Lucas found reasons to come into town more frequently. He needed extra supplies, he told himself. He wanted to check on the progress of his horse that the blacksmith was shoeing. He had business with the bank. The excuses were thin, and he knew it, and he suspected Lily knew it too. But she never called him out on it. Instead, she seemed genuinely happy to see him each time he appeared, and their friendship deepened with each conversation. He learned that she loved poetry, but had a weakness for dime novels about outlaws and gunfighters. She learned that he had a talent for working with horses and hoped someday to breed them for a living. They talked about books and philosophy, about the challenges of frontier life, about their dreams for the future, and slowly, carefully, they began to talk about more personal things. Lucas told her about Sarah, about the guilt he still carried that he had not been able to save her, about the years of loneliness that had followed. Lily told him about the fear that sometimes kept her awake at night, the worry that she would never be more than a woman barely scraping by, that she would grow old alone with nothing to show for her life but survival. "That is not a small thing, though," Lucas said one afternoon as they sat together on the porch of the boarding house, watching the sun paint the sky orange and pink. "Survival, making your own way. You should be proud of what you have accomplished." "I suppose," Lily said, but she sounded unconvinced. "It is just that sometimes I want more than survival. I want a life that means something, that has purpose and connection. I want to matter to someone." Lucas turned to look at her, his heart pounding so hard he was sure she must be able to hear it. "You matter to me, Lily, more than you know." She met his gaze, and the air between them seemed to thicken with everything they had been carefully not saying for weeks. "Lucas, Whatever she had been about to say was cut off by the sound of hoofbeats and angry voices. They both stood as a group of riders came down the street at a fast clip, led by a man Lucas recognized from descriptions though they had never met. William Hartwell was in his 50s, barrel-chested and hard-faced, with cold blue eyes that missed nothing. He pulled his horse to a stop in front of the boarding house, and his 6 men ranged behind him like a wall of muscle and menace. Clayton Moore was among them, his expression triumphant. "You are Lily Zimmerman," Hartwell said. It was not a question. Lily lifted her chin. "I am. You have caused me considerable inconvenience, Miss Zimmerman. Refusing honest work is one thing, but claiming that I mistreat my employees is slander. I could have you arrested for defamation." "I did not claim anything," Lily said, her voice steady, though Lucas could see her hands trembling. "I simply refused a job offer. What others say about you and your ranch is not my responsibility." Hartwell's eyes narrowed. "You refused because you believed lies told by disgruntled former employees. Now, those lies are spreading, making it harder for me to hire good people. I am here to offer you a choice. Come work for me, do the job I hired you for, and prove to everyone that the rumors are false. Or refuse again, and I will make sure every business owner in this town knows you are a liar and a troublemaker. You will never work in Springerville again." Lucas stepped forward, placing himself between Hartwell and Lily. "The lady has already given you her answer. Time for you to leave." Hartwell's attention shifted to Lucas, and something dangerous glinted in his eyes. "Everhart, I have heard about you, the hero who saved the poor woman from my foreman. Let me tell you something about heroes, Everhart. They tend to end up dead or broken. This is not your concern. Step aside." "I am making it my concern," Lucas said. "And you need to understand something, Hartwell. Lily is under my protection now. If you or any of your men bother her again, you will answer to me." Laughter erupted from the group of riders, harsh and mocking. Hartwell did not laugh, but his expression suggested he found Lucas's declaration amusing. "Your protection?" Hartwell repeated. "What exactly do you think you can do against me and my men, Everhart? You are one man with a tiny ranch that barely makes enough to feed yourself. I own half this county. I have money, influence, and armed men who do what I tell them. You are nothing, an insect I could crush without thinking." "Maybe," Lucas agreed, "but I am an insect who knows right from wrong, and I am an insect who will not stand by and let you threaten an innocent woman. So you have a choice to make, Hartwell. Leave Lily alone and go back to your ranch, or find out just how much trouble one insect can cause when he is fighting for something that matters." The 2 men stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Hartwell made a dismissive gesture and turned his horse. "This is not over, not by a long shot. Watch your back, Everhart. And you, Miss Zimmerman, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." They rode off in a cloud of dust, leaving Lucas and Lily standing on the porch. Lily was shaking, her face pale beneath the golden tan the Arizona sun had given her. "You should not have done that," she whispered. "You should not have made an enemy of him because of me." "Too late," Lucas said, "and I would do it again in a heartbeat. You are worth standing up for, Lily, worth fighting for." She looked at him with such a mixture of fear and gratitude and something else, something deeper, that Lucas felt his control slip. Without thinking about consequences or propriety, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. For a moment, she froze, and he thought he had made a terrible mistake. But then she melted against him, her hands gripping his shirt, kissing him back with a passion that took his breath away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lily touched her fingers to her lips as if she could not quite believe what had just happened. "Lucas, I care about you, Lily," he said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "More than I thought I could care about anyone again. I know it is fast, I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but I cannot help how I feel. You have become important to me, essential even." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "I care about you too, so much. I have been trying not to, trying to protect myself from getting hurt, but I cannot help it either. You make me feel safe and seen and valued. You make me feel like I matter." "You do matter," Lucas said fiercely. "To me, you matter more than anything." They stood there holding each other, and Lucas felt something shift and settle in his chest, something that had been broken for 5 years, slowly beginning to heal. This was what he had thought lost forever when Sarah died. The connection, the sense of rightness, the feeling that he had found someone who understood him on a fundamental level. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat from the doorway, and they jumped apart like guilty children. The older woman was trying to look stern, but failing miserably, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "If you two are going to stand on my porch kissing, you ought to at least make things proper. Mr. Everhart, do you have honorable intentions toward Miss Zimmerman?" Lucas did not hesitate. "I do, madam. The most honorable. If Lily will have me, I would like to court her properly." Lily laughed, a sound of pure joy. "I will have you, Lucas Everhart, gladly." The courtship that followed was both wonderful and complicated. Wonderful because every moment they spent together revealed new depths to their connection, new reasons to fall deeper in love. Complicated because William Hartwell made good on his threats. Within a week, Lily lost half her students as parents mysteriously decided their children no longer needed reading lessons. 2 of the shop owners she did bookkeeping for told her they were handling the accounts themselves now. The income she had been barely surviving on dwindled to almost nothing. Lucas offered to help financially, but Lily refused with a stubbornness that was both admirable and frustrating. "I will not be dependent on you or any man. I need to be able to take care of myself." "It would not be dependence," Lucas argued. "It would be 2 people who care about each other helping when times are hard. What is wrong with that?" "Everything, if it means I lose my independence," Lily shot back. They were in the boarding house parlor, and other residents were pretending not to listen to their argument with varying degrees of success. "Do you not understand, Lucas? All my life, I have watched women give up pieces of themselves for security. My mother, before she died, was miserable because she had no say in her own life. My father made all the decisions, controlled all the money. She loved him, but she was like a bird in a cage. I swore I would never let that happen to me." Lucas felt frustration warring with understanding. "I am not asking you to be a bird in a cage, Lily. I am asking you to let me help you through a difficult time. There is a difference." "Is there?" Lily's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Where does help end and control begin? How do I know you will not start making decisions for me, thinking you know what is best, taking away my choices bit by bit until I do not recognize myself anymore?" The fear in her voice cut through Lucas's frustration, helping him see past his own perspective. She was not being stubborn for the sake of it. She was terrified of losing the autonomy she had fought so hard to achieve. And after what Clayton Moore had done to her, after William Hartwell's threats and intimidation, could he really blame her for wanting to maintain control over at least this one aspect of her life? "You are right," Lucas said quietly. "I am sorry. I was not thinking about how it must feel from your side. I just hate watching you struggle when I could help." Lily crossed the room and took his hands in hers. "I know you mean well, and I love you for wanting to help, but I need to figure this out on my own. Can you understand that?" Lucas froze, his heart stuttering in his chest. "What did you say?" Confusion crossed her face, then understanding, then embarrassment. "Oh, I said I love you. I did not mean to say it like that, just blurting it out in the middle of an argument, but it is true. I love you, Lucas." A grin spread across his face, so wide it almost hurt. "I love you too, Lily. I have been trying to find the right moment to tell you, but there never seemed to be a perfect time. And now you have beaten me to it, which somehow seems exactly right." She laughed, and then they were kissing again, and the argument was forgotten in the sweet discovery of knowing they loved each other. But the practical problems remained. Lily's income continued to shrink, and within 2 months she could no longer afford her room at the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson, bless her, offered to let Lily stay rent-free in exchange for helping with cooking and cleaning, but Lily's pride would not allow it. "I will not accept charity," she said firmly. "If I am going to stay, I will work for my keep. That is fair trade, not charity." Mrs. Patterson agreed, and for a while, things stabilized. But Lucas could see the toll it was taking on Lily. She worked from dawn until late in the evening, cooking and cleaning and doing laundry, all while still trying to give lessons to the few students whose parents had not been intimidated by Hartwell. She grew thin and tired, dark circles forming under her eyes. Her short hair, which had been slowly growing back, looked dull and lifeless. And the light in her eyes, that fierce spark Lucas had fallen in love with, began to dim. One evening in late October, Lucas found her in the boarding house garden, sitting on the bench where he had first found her reading to children. She was not reading now. She was just sitting there, staring at nothing, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion and defeat. "Lily," he said softly, sitting beside her, "we need to talk." "I know what you are going to say," she replied without looking at him, "that I should accept help, that I am being too stubborn and proud, that I am hurting myself for no good reason." "No," Lucas said, "that is not what I am going to say. What I am going to say is that I want to marry you." That got her attention. She turned to stare at him, her mouth falling open in shock. "What?" Lucas took her hands in his, feeling their roughness from all the hard work she had been doing. "Marry me, Lily, not because you need to be rescued, not because you need someone to take care of you, but because I love you, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Because we are better together than we are apart. Because I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. Because I want to build a life with you, as partners, true partners, where we make decisions together and support each other and face whatever comes as a team." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Lucas, I do not know what to say." "Say yes," he urged. "Say you will come to the ranch with me, not as someone who needs to be taken care of, but as my wife and my equal. We can build something together. Lily, you could teach children out there. There are families scattered all over the countryside who would pay for their children to have a real education. You could finally make the kind of money your skills deserve, and Hartwell could not touch you because you would be beyond his reach. And more than that, we would be together. Is that not worth saying yes to?" Lily searched his face, and Lucas held his breath, waiting. He had never wanted anything as much as he wanted her answer to be yes. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and fragile, but it was there. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you, Lucas Everhart. I love you, and I want to build a life with you, as partners, as equals." Relief and joy flooded through him so powerfully that he felt dizzy with it. He pulled her into his arms and held her tight, feeling her heart beat against his chest. This woman, with her butchered hair and her fierce pride and her stubborn refusal to be broken, she had somehow healed parts of him he thought would be wounded forever. And he would spend the rest of his life proving to her that she had made the right choice. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church at the edge of town. Mrs. Patterson stood up as Lily's witness, and Lucas's closest neighbor, an older rancher named Thomas Garrett, served as his. The ceremony was brief, the celebration afterward even briefer, but to Lucas, it was perfect. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, and he kissed Lily for the first time as her husband, he felt like the luckiest man in the Arizona territory. They rode out to his ranch that afternoon, Lily sitting beside him on the wagon seat with her few possessions loaded in the back. As they approached the property, Lucas found himself seeing it through her eyes and hoping she would not be disappointed. The house was small, just 3 rooms, but it was sturdy and well built. The barn needed some repairs, and the corral fence was leaning in a few places, but the land itself was beautiful. Rolling hills covered in grass that turned gold in the sunset, a creek that ran year-round providing water for the livestock and gardens, mountains rising in the distance like sentinels watching over everything. "It is beautiful," Lily breathed, and Lucas felt his chest expand with pride and relief. "Lucas, this is absolutely beautiful." "It is home," he said. "Our home now. I know it is not much, but we can build on it together. Make it into something bigger and better." Lily turned to him, and the light was back in her eyes, that fierce spark he loved so much. "It is perfect. Thank you for bringing me here, for making me your wife, for believing in me when I was afraid I had nothing left to believe in myself." The first months of their marriage were hard work, but filled with a happiness Lucas had not known was possible. They fell into a rhythm, dividing the labor based on skills and interests rather than rigid ideas about what men and women should do. Lucas handled the heavier ranch work, caring for the horses and cattle, repairing buildings and fences, hunting for meat. Lily took over the vegetable garden and expanded it significantly, tended the chickens they bought from a neighbor, and began reaching out to families in the surrounding area about tutoring their children. Word spread quickly, and within a month, Lily had 10 students who came to the ranch twice a week for lessons. She charged fair prices, and the families paid gladly, grateful that their children could receive an education without the long trip into Springerville. The income was modest but steady, and it gave Lily the independence she so valued. Lucas watched her blossom under the combined effects of meaningful work and being truly loved, and his own happiness grew in proportion to hers. But they had not forgotten about William Hartwell. The rancher had been strangely quiet since their marriage, making no moves against them. But Lucas did not trust the silence. Men like Hartwell did not forget perceived slights, and they had both insulted him by refusing to be intimidated. Lucas took to carrying his rifle more often, and he made sure Lily knew how to shoot and where he kept the weapons in the house. He hoped they would never need these precautions, but he was not foolish enough to leave them unprepared. Winter came to the high desert, bringing cold winds and occasional snow that dusted the hills white before melting away. Lucas and Lily spent the long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, talking about their plans for the ranch, making love, and learning each other's bodies with a patient thoroughness of people who knew they had a lifetime ahead of them. Lily's hair had grown out to a length that just touched her shoulders, and she wore it loose around the house, though she still pinned it up when she taught or went into town. One night in January, as they lay tangled together in bed with the wind howling outside, Lily said, "Do you ever think about children?" Lucas propped himself up on one elbow to look down at her. "I do. Do you want children?" "I think so," she said slowly. "I always thought I did, but after watching how much children can tie a woman down, limit her choices, I became uncertain. But being here with you, building this life together, I find myself thinking about it more. Imagining what our children might be like." Lucas traced a finger along her jawline, marveling as he always did that this incredible woman was his. "Children would tie me down just as much as you. We would be in it together, Lily. And yes, things would change, life would get harder in some ways. But I think we could do it. I think we would be good parents." "Do you really mean that?" Lily asked. "That you would be equally tied down? Because so many men say things like that, but when the reality arrives, they go back to their lives and leave the woman to handle everything." "I really mean it," Lucas said firmly. "I am not those men, Lily. You are my partner, my equal. If we decide to have children, they will be our responsibility together. I promise you that." Lily smiled and pulled him down for a kiss. "Then yes, I want children with you, someday, when we are ready." Spring arrived with a burst of wildflowers covering the hills in waves of color. Lily's garden flourished, and she spent hours tending it, coaxing vegetables from the red earth. Her students increased to 15, and she began holding classes 3 times a week. Money was still tight, but they were making it work, building slowly toward a more secure future. Lucas's horse breeding operation was starting to show promise, and he had sold 3 young horses for decent prices. Life was good. It was in late April when William Hartwell finally made his move. Lucas had gone into town for supplies, leaving Lily alone at the ranch. She was in the garden when she heard horses approaching and looked up to see Hartwell and 4 of his men riding into the yard. Her heart began to pound, but she straightened her spine and walked out to meet them, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mr. Hartwell, what brings you to my property?" Hartwell dismounted, his expression unreadable. "Your property. That is amusing, Mrs. Everhart. Do you know why?" Lily felt ice forming in her stomach. "I do not follow you." "This land," Hartwell said, gesturing around, "it sits right in the middle of the route I need for my cattle drive. Your husband's tiny ranch is like a thorn in my side, forcing me to go miles out of my way. I have tried to buy him out before, but he refused. I am hoping his wife might be more reasonable." "You want to buy our ranch," Lily said flatly, "and you thought I would agree without even discussing it with Lucas?" "I thought you might have more sense than your husband," Hartwell replied. "I am offering triple what this place is worth. Enough money for you both to start over somewhere else, somewhere better. Take the offer, Mrs. Everhart. It is the smart choice." "The answer is no," Lily said without hesitation. "This is our home. We are not selling." Hartwell's expression hardened. "You are making a mistake. I tried to do this the civilized way, but you people keep refusing to be reasonable. Maybe I need to help you understand that sometimes the smart thing is to accept when you have been beaten." Before Lily could react, two of Hartwell's men had dismounted and grabbed her arms, holding her fast. She struggled and screamed, but they were too strong. Hartwell pulled a knife from his belt and walked toward her with slow, deliberate steps. "Your hair has grown back nicely," he observed. "Shame to ruin it again. But maybe this time the lesson will stick." Terror flooded through Lily, but beneath it was a core of fury. She was not the same woman who had been assaulted by Clayton Moore 9 months ago. She had been broken down and built back up. She had found love and purpose and strength. She would not be a passive victim again. As Hartwell reached for her hair, Lily drove her boot heel down as hard as she could onto the instep of the man holding her right arm. He howled and loosened his grip just enough for her to wrench free. She drove her elbow back into the other man's stomach, and when he doubled over, she ran. Not toward the house, but toward the barn where she knew Lucas kept a loaded rifle. She almost made it. Her fingers were on the barn door when Hartwell caught her from behind, grabbing a handful of her hair and yanking her backwards. She fell hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. Hartwell stood over her with his knife, and there was something cold and terrible in his eyes. "You should have taken the offer," he said. "Now I am going to cut off every bit of hair on your head, and then I am going to burn your house and barn to the ground. When your husband comes home, he will find you bald and everything he has worked for destroyed. And then maybe, finally, you people will understand that you do not say no to me." He bent down, reaching for her hair, and Lily prepared to fight with everything she had. But before Hartwell could touch her, a shot rang out. The knife flew from Hartwell's hand, spinning away into the dirt. Everyone froze. Lucas stood at the edge of the yard, his rifle raised and pointed directly at Hartwell. His face was a mask of cold fury that Lily had never seen before. "Get away from my wife, now!" Hartwell straightened slowly, his eyes never leaving Lucas. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Everhart." "The only mistake here is yours," Lucas said. "You came onto my property, assaulted my wife, and threatened to destroy our home. That gives me every legal right to shoot you where you stand. And believe me, I am tempted. The only thing stopping me is that my wife has seen enough violence. So here is what is going to happen. You and your men are going to get on your horses and leave. And if you ever come near Lily again, if you so much as look at her wrong when we are in town, I will hunt you down and make you regret it. Are we clear?" For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Hartwell smiled, a thin, cruel expression. "We are clear, Everhart, crystal clear. But you should know that this is not over, not by a long shot. You have made an enemy you cannot afford to have. Watch your back." He mounted his horse, and his men followed suit. As they rode out, Hartwell called back, "That is a nice ranch you have here. Be a shame if something happened to it." The moment they were out of sight, Lucas dropped his rifle and ran to Lily. She threw herself into his arms, shaking with reaction. "I was so scared. He was going to cut my hair again, destroy everything." I know," Lucas murmured, holding her tight. "But you were so brave, Lily. You fought back. I am so proud of you." "How did you know to come back?" she asked. "I ran into Thomas Garrett in town. He had seen Hartwell and his men heading this direction, and knew it meant trouble. I rode back as fast as Copper could carry me. Thank God I got here in time." They stood there holding each other until the shaking subsided. Then Lucas pulled back and looked seriously into her eyes. "Lily, we need to make a decision. Hartwell is not going to stop. He is going to keep coming after us, making our lives miserable, until he gets what he wants or we are broken. We can sell and leave, start over somewhere else. Or we can stay and fight, knowing it is going to be hard and dangerous. It has to be your choice too. What do you want to do?" Lily did not hesitate. "I want to stay. This is our home, Lucas. We built this together. I will not let a bully like William Hartwell drive us away." Lucas smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "I was hoping you would say that, because I am not ready to give this up either. But we are going to need help. We cannot fight Hartwell alone." Over the next several days, Lucas reached out to their neighbors, to the other small ranchers and farmers who had been pushed around by Hartwell over the years. He found more allies than he expected. Thomas Garrett was the first to offer support, followed by two other ranchers whose property also sat in the path of Hartwell's desired cattle route. A farmer who had lost his daughter to one of Hartwell's men and gotten no justice because the sheriff was in Hartwell's pocket. A shopkeeper in town who had been forced to give Hartwell credit that was never paid back. One by one, people who had been too afraid to stand up alone found courage in numbers. They formed a coalition, watching out for each other's property, sharing information about Hartwell's movements, presenting a unified front. When Hartwell tried to intimidate the farmer, 3 other men showed up to support him. When one of his men tried to rough up the shopkeeper, witnesses appeared and the man backed down. Slowly, the balance of power began to shift. Hartwell tried to use the sheriff against them, but even Sheriff Briggs could not arrest people for the crime of watching out for their neighbors. When Hartwell's cattle drive came through in June, he was forced to go around Lucas's ranch just like everyone else, adding miles to his route and costing him time and money. The small victory felt enormous. Through it all, Lily and Lucas held on to each other and the life they were building. In August, nearly a year after the day Clayton Moore had cut off Lily's hair, she told Lucas she was pregnant. He lifted her up and spun her around, both of them laughing with joy. They had faced so much together, survived so many challenges. A baby seemed like a gift, a promise that good things could come from holding on to hope even in hard times. Lily continued teaching through the fall, though she grew more tired as the pregnancy progressed. Lucas took over more of the household work, insisting that she rest, and for once Lily did not argue about maintaining her independence. She was learning that accepting help from someone who loved you was not weakness, it was wisdom. Their daughter was born in March of 1880, a healthy baby girl with a shock of dark hair and her mother's eyes. They named her Sarah, after Lucas's first wife, because Lily insisted and because it felt right to honor the woman who had come before. Little Sarah was a joy, a squalling, demanding, perfect joy, who turned their lives upside down and made everything harder and more wonderful all at once. Lucas proved true to his word, taking on the care of their daughter with the same dedication he brought to everything else. He changed diapers and walked the floor with Sarah when she could not sleep and learned to calm her cries when Lily was too exhausted to get up one more time. They were partners in parenting as they were in everything else, and watching Lucas with their daughter made Lily fall even deeper in love with him. When Sarah was 6 months old, something unexpected happened. William Hartwell died. He was thrown from his horse during a storm and broke his neck. Just like that, the man who had made their lives so difficult was gone. There was no great confrontation, no final showdown. Just a random accident, the kind of thing that could happen to anyone on the frontier. With Hartwell gone, his ranch fell apart. His sons had no interest in ranching and sold off the property piecemeal. Clayton Moore drifted away to cause trouble somewhere else. The pressure that had been hanging over Lucas and Lily's life lifted, and for the first time, they could simply live without looking over their shoulders. The years that followed were good ones. Their ranch grew slowly but steadily. Lucas's horse breeding operation became known throughout the territory for quality animals. Lily's school expanded until she had 20 regular students and had to hire a young woman from town to help with the teaching. They had 2 more children, a son they named James, born in 1882, and another daughter, Elizabeth, born in 1884. Through it all, Lily's hair remained short. It had grown back over the years, but she kept it cut to shoulder length, refusing to let it grow longer. When Lucas asked her why, she smiled and said, "Because I want to remember. That day that Clayton cut my hair, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen to me. I thought he had taken something precious. But you showed me that my worth was not in my hair, that I was beautiful and valuable exactly as I was. That is a lesson I never want to forget. This hair is a reminder of what I survived, and of the moment I met the man who changed everything. Lucas would pull her close and kiss her forehead and tell her that she was the most beautiful woman he had ever known, and he meant it. Every gray hair that appeared as the years passed, every line that formed around her eyes from smiling and squinting into the Arizona sun, every change that time brought only made her more precious to him. They grew old together on that ranch, surrounded by children and grandchildren, building a legacy that had nothing to do with wealth or power, and everything to do with love and partnership, and refusing to give up even when things were hard. The day that Clayton Moore had cut off Lily's hair in an attempt to humiliate her had instead set in motion a chain of events that led to the greatest happiness either of them had ever known. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Lucas and Lily sat on the porch of their ranch house, which had been expanded over the years into a comfortable home. Their children were playing in the yard, Sarah teaching James how to properly curry a horse while Elizabeth picked wildflowers. The sun was setting over the hills, painting everything gold and orange. "Do you ever regret it?" Lucas asked. "Staying here, fighting instead of running. We could have gone somewhere easier, somewhere without men like Hartwell making trouble." Lily took his hand and laced their fingers together. "Not for 1 second. This is our home. We built it together through hard work and stubbornness and love. Running away would have meant giving up on ourselves. I would rather fight for something that matters than have an easy life that means nothing." Lucas raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I love you, Lily Everhart, more today than the day I married you, and I will love you even more tomorrow." "And I love you," Lily replied. "You saw me when others only saw a woman who had lost her hair. You saw my worth when I was struggling to see it myself. You gave me a home and a family and a life that is richer than anything I could have imagined. Thank you for that, for all of it." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon and the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance a coyote called out, its song lonely and wild. But Lucas and Lily were not lonely. They had each other, and that made all the difference. The years continued to roll by with a steady rhythm of seasons changing and children growing. Sarah proved to have her mother's gift for teaching and eventually took over the school, expanding it until children came from 20 miles around to learn. James had his father's way with horses and became a renowned breeder, producing animals that were sought after throughout the territory. Elizabeth, their youngest, turned out to have a talent for business and began managing the financial side of the ranch, negotiating contracts and keeping the books with a precision that impressed everyone who worked with her. Lucas and Lily watched their children grow and thrive with the deep satisfaction of knowing they had raised them well, had given them not just material security, but also values that would serve them throughout their lives. Hard work, integrity, the importance of standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. The understanding that real strength came not from dominating others, but from lifting them up. When Sarah announced her engagement to a young rancher from the next county over, Lily helped her prepare for the wedding, with joy and only a little melancholy at seeing her firstborn prepare to start her own life. The ceremony was held at the ranch, with half the territory attending, and as Lucas walked Sarah down the makeshift aisle they had created in the yard, he caught Lily's eye and saw tears streaming down her face. Happy tears, though. Always happy tears when it came to their children. James married a few years later, bringing home a spirited young woman who was not intimidated by the hard work of ranch life. Elizabeth surprised everyone by falling in love with a school teacher from back east who had come to Springerville looking for adventure. He found more than he bargained for in Elizabeth, and they made a good match, his gentle nature balancing her fierce determination. As grandchildren began to arrive, Lucas and Lily found themselves entering a new phase of life. They stepped back from the day-to-day running of the ranch, letting their children take over while they enjoyed the slower pace of their later years. They spent their days tending the garden together, reading, taking long walks through the hills they had called home for so long, and spoiling their grandchildren with a shameless enthusiasm that made their own children shake their heads in amused exasperation. One warm summer evening, when Lucas was 65 and Lily 63, they sat together on their porch as they had done countless times before. Lily's hair was now more silver than brown, still cut to shoulder length, as it had been for over 30 years. Lucas's beard was fully gray, and his hands showed the wear of decades of hard work, but his eyes still lit up when he looked at his wife. "Do you remember the first day we met?" Lily asked, her hand in his as always. "When Clayton cut off my hair, and you told me my beauty was not in my hair?" I remember every detail, Lucas said. How angry I was at what he had done. How scared you looked, but also how fierce. The way you lifted your chin and called him a coward. I think I started falling in love with you in that moment. I was so humiliated, Lily said softly. I thought my life was over, that no man would ever look at me the same way. And then you came along and saw me, really saw me, not just what had been taken from me, but what remained, what could never be taken. You gave me back my sense of self-worth that day. You always had worth, Lucas corrected gently. I just reminded you of it. Everything you have accomplished, everything you have become, that was all you, Lily. I have just been lucky enough to be along for the ride. Lily shifted in her chair to look at him fully. We have had a good life, have we not? Despite everything, despite all the challenges and the hardships and the times when we were not sure we would make it. We built something real and lasting. The best life, Lucas agreed. Better than I ever thought possible after Sarah died. I thought my chance at happiness was gone forever. And then you came along and taught me that the heart has more capacity for love than we give it credit for. That loss does not have to be the end of the story. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared. Inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren laughing, staying over for the night as they often did. The sound filled Lucas with a contentment so deep it almost hurt. I am glad it happened, Lily said suddenly. Lucas looked at her in surprise. What do you mean? The hair cutting. I am glad Clayton Moore did what he did, even though it was cruel and humiliating. Because if he had not, I would not have met you. Not really. You would have been just another cowboy I might have seen in passing in town. We would never have spoken, never have built this life together. Something terrible led to something wonderful. I am glad it happened exactly the way it did. Lucas considered that, turning the idea over in his mind. It was true that suffering could sometimes lead to unexpected blessings, that the worst moments could become doorways to the best parts of life. He had learned that lesson when Sarah's death eventually led him to Lily. But it was still hard to be grateful for cruelty, even when good came from it. I understand what you mean, he said finally. But I still wish you had not had to go through that pain. I wish we could have met some other way. But we did not, Lily said simply. And wishing for a different past is pointless. This is the path we walked together, and I would not change a single step of it because every step led us here. She was right, of course. She usually was. Lucas pulled her close and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair that smelled like the lavender soap she had been using for 30 years. This woman who had come into his life broken and afraid and had become his partner, his love, his everything. The woman who had taught him that beauty had nothing to do with appearances and everything to do with character. The woman who had given him children and grandchildren and a legacy of love that would outlast them both. I love you, he whispered into her hair. Today, tomorrow, and every day for as long as I live. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Lily Everhart. And you are mine, she whispered back, the man who saw past the hair to the person underneath. The man who believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. Thank you for that, Lucas. Thank you for everything. They stayed on the porch long into the night, two old people who had loved each other through decades of joy and sorrow, triumph and defeat. Always together, always partners. And when they finally went inside to bed, they fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms as they had done every night for 34 years. Two souls who had found each other against all odds and refused to let go. The years continued their steady march forward. Lucas and Lily celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, a crowd so large they had to hold the party in the barn because the house could not contain everyone. There were speeches and toasts and more than a few tears, and through it all, Lucas and Lily sat side by side, their hands clasped together, marveling at the family they had created, the lives they had touched. When Lucas was 73, he fell ill with a fever that the doctor said was pneumonia. Lily refused to leave his side, sitting by his bed day and night, holding his hand and reading to him when he was lucid, just keeping vigil when he was not. Their children took turns sitting with them, and the grandchildren came to say goodbye, though everyone tried to stay hopeful that he would recover. On the 5th night, Lucas opened his eyes and found Lily sitting in the chair beside his bed, her silver hair gleaming in the lamplight. She looked tired, more tired than he had ever seen her, and he felt a surge of concern even through his own weakness. "You should rest," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "I will rest when you are better," Lily replied, leaning forward to press a cool cloth to his forehead. "Not before." "Lily," Lucas said, and there was something in his tone that made her freeze. "Lily, if I do not make it through this—" "Do not talk like that," she said fiercely. "You are going to be fine. You are going to get better, and we are going to have many more years together." "I hope so," Lucas said. "I truly do. But if I do not, I need you to know something. These 44 years with you have been the greatest gift of my life. You made me whole again when I thought I was permanently broken. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up every morning grateful to be alive. I have loved you since the day I saw you in that dirt with your hair cut off, refusing to let them see you defeated. I will love you until the last breath leaves my body, and if there is anything beyond this life, I will love you there too." Tears streamed down Lily's face, and she gripped his hand so tightly it almost hurt. "I love you too, more than words can express. You saved me, Lucas. In every way a person can be saved. Please do not leave me. I am not ready to let you go." "I am not planning to go anywhere," Lucas said, managing a weak smile. "Too stubborn to die yet. We still have grandchildren to spoil, and gardens to tend, and sunsets to watch together. I have too much living left to do." And somehow, miraculously, he kept that promise. The fever broke on the 6th night, and slowly, painfully, Lucas began to recover. It took months before he regained his full strength, and he was never quite as robust as he had been before. But he survived. And when he was finally able to walk out onto the porch again and sit in his chair beside Lily, watching the sun set over the hills they loved, he felt like the luckiest man alive. They had 7 more years together after that. 7 years of slow mornings and peaceful evenings, of watching their family continue to grow and flourish, of holding hands and remembering all the moments that had brought them to this place. 7 years of love so deep and comfortable, it was like breathing, essential and unconscious and necessary for survival. Lucas Everhart died peacefully in his sleep on a warm June night in 1923, 3 days after his 80th birthday. He went to bed beside Lily, as he had done every night of their married life, kissed her goodnight, told her he loved her, and simply did not wake up. The doctor said his heart had given out, worn down by age and hard work, and the simple fact that he had lived a full and complete life. Lily was devastated but not destroyed. She had loved Lucas with every fiber of her being, but she had also remained the strong, independent woman he had fallen in love with so many years ago. She grieved deeply but without breaking, allowing herself to feel the loss while also celebrating the extraordinary gift of their years together. She lived another 12 years after Lucas's death, surrounded by family, spending her days teaching her great-grandchildren to read, just as she had once taught their parents and grandparents. She told them stories about their grandfather Lucas, about how he had been kind and brave and had seen beauty in places other people missed. She made sure they understood that real love was not about grand gestures or dramatic moments, but about showing up every single day, choosing each other over and over again through all the seasons of life. Lily Everhart died on a cool October morning in 1935 at the age of 90. Her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren were with her, filling her room with love and memories and the kind of warmth that comes from a life well lived. Her last words were about Lucas, about how she would see him soon, about how she had missed him every single day, but had been grateful for every moment they had shared. They buried her next to Lucas on the hill overlooking their ranch, the land they had built together through hardship and hope. At the funeral, which was attended by what seemed like half of Arizona, Sarah, their eldest daughter, who was now in her 50s, spoke about her parents' love story. She told the tale of how they had met, how a cruel act of humiliation had become the doorway to the greatest love either of them had ever known. She talked about how her father had seen past the cut hair to the woman beneath, how he had understood that beauty and worth came from character, not appearance. "My father used to say that my mother's beauty was not in her hair," Sarah said, her voice strong despite her tears. And he was right. Her beauty was in her strength, her intelligence, her fierce determination to live life on her own terms. Her beauty was in the way she loved, completely and without reservation. Her beauty was in the legacy she left behind, in all of us standing here today who carry her values and her spirit forward into the world. That is beauty that can never be cut away or diminished or lost. That is the beauty my father saw on the day they met, and that is the beauty that will live on as long as any of us draw breath." The crowd murmured agreement, and as they lowered Lily's casket into the ground beside Lucas's, the sun broke through the clouds, spilling golden light across the ranch that had been their home, their refuge, their kingdom. The land that had witnessed their love story from beginning to end, from that first meeting when Lucas had told a broken woman she was beautiful, to this final moment when they were reunited in death as they had been united in life. The ranch stayed in the family for generations after that, each new generation adding their own chapters to the story while honoring the foundation that Lucas and Lily had built. And every person who lived there, worked there, or even just visited, learned the story of how it all began, with a young woman who had her hair cut off to humiliate her pride, and a cowboy who saw beauty where others saw only shame. It became a legend in the family, passed down from parents to children to grandchildren. The story of how Lucas Everhart and Lily Zimmerman met in Springerville, Arizona in 1878, how they fell in love against the odds, how they built a life together through determination and partnership and unwavering commitment. The story of how they proved that real beauty, real worth, real love had nothing to do with superficial things and everything to do with the content of a person's character. And every time the story was told, the teller would always end with the same words that had become the family motto, the words Lucas had spoken to Lily on the day they met. "Your beauty is not in your hair, it is in who you are, and that can never be taken from you." Those words echoed through the generations, a reminder that dignity and worth were intrinsic, that cruelty could not diminish the human spirit, that love could grow from even the darkest moments. They were words to live by, words that had shaped not just one couple's life, but an entire family's understanding of what mattered in the world. The hair had grown back, as hair always does. But the lesson learned on that dusty August day in Springerville never faded. True beauty, true worth, true love looked deeper than the surface. They saw the person underneath, the soul beneath the skin, the strength hidden behind temporary pain. That was what Lucas Everhart had given Lily Zimmerman on the day they met. And that was what she had given him in return every day of their life together. It was a simple truth, really, but simple truths often carry the most power. And this one had carried Lucas and Lily through 44 years of marriage, through challenges and triumphs, through sorrow and joy, through everything life had thrown at them. It had been their foundation, their touchstone, their North Star. And in the end, it had been enough, more than enough. It had been everything.